How do you know which century a year is in when studying history? In which century does the year AD 100 occur? If you don't know for sure, this video is for you. It will teach you how to correctly number the centuries in history so that you never get it wrong again. Let's begin. Hello everyone, welcome to another History Skills video. Today we're looking at how to correctly number the centuries in history. The correct order of events and time in history is known as chronology. As history is the study of everything that happened in the past, it is crucial that you know how to reference the centuries correctly. Let's start with the basics. A century is a complete period of exactly 100 years, not more, not less. Each set of 100 years is a century. Therefore, a century begins when you start at 1 and stops when you reach 100. For example, the first year in the first century AD is known as AD 1. Therefore, the last year of the first century is AD 100. Sounds pretty straightforward, doesn't it? However, you'll see many places on the internet that claim that the first century AD begins at AD 1 and ends at AD 99. This is obviously incorrect, as that does not provide a full set of 100 years. As a result of this error, your counting of the years in each century will always be incorrect by 1 year. Another mistake that people make is saying that the first year of the first century is actually year 0. However, this is completely untrue, as there is no year 0 in history. The year that actually occurs just before AD 1 is not year 0, it is actually the year 1 BC. So back to the explanation. We know that the first century begins at AD 1 and ends at AD 100. Therefore, the next century, known as the second century, begins at AD 101 and ends at AD 200. In a similar way, the third century begins in 201 and ends in 300. The pattern continues throughout the centuries AD. The first year ends in a 1 and the last year ends in 2 zeros. Therefore, if we jump ahead in time, we can say that the 10th century begins at 901 and ends in 1000. Finally, we can see that the 20th century began in 1901 and ended in 2000. So if numbering the centuries is so straightforward, why do so many people get it wrong? What often confuses people about counting centuries is that most of the years in a century do not start with a number assigned to the century. For example, we said the 3rd century began in 201 and ended in 300. Therefore, the first 99 years of the 3rd century actually begin with the number 2. 201, 211, 250, etc. Therefore, to know which century any given year is in, remember that it is the final year of the century which provides the number for it. For example, the last year of the 3rd century was 300. If you cover up the zeros, it will show you how many lots of 100 have been counted. Therefore, the century that ends in the year 300 is the 3rd century. Another example, if a century began in 1501 and ended in 1600, by covering up the zeros in the final year, we can see that this is the 16th century. A millennium is a set of 1000 years. The same rule for centuries applies to millennia. Just use lots of 1000 instead of 100. Therefore, the first year of the first millennium was AD 1 and the final year is AD 1000. In the same way, the first year of the second millennium was 1001 and the final year was 2000. But what about the years BC? When you're looking at centuries that are numbered BC, remember that just like negative numbers in maths, the years count down rather than up. Therefore, the same rules apply, but they just work in reverse. Therefore, the first year of the first century BC is actually 100 BC, and the last year is 1 BC. When talking about centuries BC, it is the first year in chronological order which provides the number for the century. For example, the 2nd century BC began with the year 200 BC, and the last year was 101 BC. When counting millennia BC, the same rule applies, but in reverse also. The first millennia BC began in 1000 BC and ended in 1 BC. Now you have a better understanding of how to correctly number the centuries in history. I hope that you feel more confident in your studies. If you need further explanations, examples and advice, head over to historyskills.com and I'll see you next time.